The last time we spoke, you weren't very happy.
I still worry. I worry about what we cannot see and do not act upon.
The shadows and the stars, their Kothan manifests.
Can you help me reason with him? I fear he's going too far with this.
He's a messenger. I will do my best.
Dracothian's tale has arrived at the footsteps of the Singing Spire, Helon's capital. The magical energies that surround it shield their appearance from most eyes. The Lumineth have received word of their vanguard's demise and have fortified several positions around the city. The Seraphon cannot be trusted, and their destructive power cannot be allowed to manifest. Despite their zealous efforts, some of the key pathways are still partially undefended. One such passage is the Zephyr Bridge that leads into the city's main gate. This is exactly where the Slann sensed a weakness, as foreseen in the cosmos. The celestial host is getting ready to ambush the scarce Aelvan forces there. As the Seraphon emerge, blazing arcane light, several walls begin to collapse at their feet. Building after building, the celestial beams spread ruination. At the edge of the bridge, the revered Hunzi raises its arm, calling swirling comets to the nearby sky. As he prepares to utter the words, a green branch of olive tree wraps around his wrist and pulls it down. The elite wizard warriors roar in surprise, fiercely surrounding their leader. A fiery bloom of flowers and small trees spreads through the valley, followed by a melancholic tune and a creepy singing. At the back, two burning green eyes emerge from the dark foliage.
You are not welcome here. Turn around. Punish the hunting more behind. Leave or fertilize.
The battle tactic is intimidate invaders. The Slann activates spatial translocation on Croak. The Realm Shaper engine activates, but deals no damage. Slann and Croak generate 2 extra command points. Slann activates Gift of the Heavens on Croak. Slan casts Comet's Call, but it is unbound. The Slan casts Umbrel's Paw Portal. The Slan miscasts, taking 2 damage that go into the Saurus Guard. The Skink Priest casts Cosmic Crush and deals 3 damage to the Spiterider Lances. Croak casts Celestial Deliverance, dealing 1 damage to the Spiteriders, 3 damage to the Tree Lord, and 3 damage to the Lady of Vines. Croak casts Celestial Deliverance again, using a Primal Dice, but it is unbound. Sylvaneth uses a Primal Dice to unbind. Croak casts Celestial Deliverance, but it is unbound. Croak casts Celestial Deliverance one last time, dealing 3 damage to the Spiteriders. The Skink Star Priest activates Serpent Staff on the Saurus Guards. The Slan activates Spacefolder's Stave. The Saurus Guard activates at the double. The Seraphon summon 10 skinks. The 10 Saurus warriors deep strike. Seraphon scores 5 victory points. The battle tactic is intimidate invaders. The Lady of Vines and the Tree Lord healed 1 wound from the Places of Power ability. The Slan dispels the Umbral spell portal. The Warsong Ravenant fails to activate Heroic Leadership. Croak fails to activate Heroic Leadership. The Warsong Ravenant casts Spite Swarm Hive, but it is unbound. The Warsong Ravenant casts Verdant Blessing, but it is unbound. The Warsong Ravenant casts Hoarfrost, but it is unbound. The Lady of Vines casts Aspect of the Everqueen, but it is unbound. The Lady of Vine casts Mystic Shield, but it is unbound. The Saurus Guard activate redeploy. The Warsong Ravenant activates at the double. The Ravenant Seekers activate Harvesters of the Lamentiri on the Spiterider lances, returning one model. The Lady of Vines activates Rouse to Wrath and summons 10 Dryads. The Lady of Vines deals 4 damage to the Saurus God. The Tree Lord deals no damage to the Saurus God. The Tree Lord fails to activate Stomp. Croak fails to activate Golden Death Mask. The Spiterider activate All-Out Attack. The Spiterider deal 2 damage to the Skink Star Priest, 3 damage to the Saurus Guard, 3 damage to the other Saurus Guard, 3 damage to the Saurus Warriors, and finishes off the Astrolith Bearer. The Ravenant Seekers deal 15 damage to the Saurus Warriors. The Ravenant Seekers activate Strike and Fade. The Skinks deal 1 damage to the Tree Lord. The Tree Lord deals 2 damage to the Saurus Guard and 8 damage to the Skinks. The Saurus Guard deal 1 damage to the Tree Lord. The Slan deals 1 damage to the Spiterider. The Saurus Guard deals 3 damage to the Spiterider. The Saurus Warriors deal 1 damage to the Spiterider. The Skink Star Priest deals 1 damage to the Spiterider. The Saurus Warriors flee to Battle Shock. Sylvaneth score 3 victory points. The battle tactic is led into the Maelstrom. The Warsong Ravenant activates Heroic Leadership. The Slan activates Their Finest Hour. The Lady of Vines casts Aspect of the Everqueen. The Warsong Ravenant casts Spitesworn Hive, but it is unbound. The Seraphon use 2 primal dice. The Lady of Vines casts Verdant Blessing, but it is unbound. The Warsong Ravenant fails to cast Hoarfrost. The Slan activates Redeploy on the Battlereport. The Ravenant Seekers activate Harvesters of the Lamentiri on the Spiterider Lancers, returning 1 model. The Lady of Vines fails to deal any damage to the Skink Star Priest. The Saurus Guard activate All-Out Defense. The Tree Lord finishes off the Saurus Guard. The Tree Lord fails to activate Roar on Croak. The Battlereport fails to activate Roar on the Tree Lord. Croak fails to activate Golden Death Mask. The Ravenant Seekers activate All-Out Attack. The Slan activates All-Out Defense. The Ravenant Seekers activate the Inspiring Triumph and deal 6 damage to the Slan and 3 damage to the Saurus Guard. The 3 Ravenants activate All-Out Defense using the Martial Memories ability. The Battlereport deals 3 damage to the 3 Ravenants. The Spiterider deal 2 damage to the Skink Star Priest, 1 damage to the Slan, and 4 damage to the Saurus Guard. The Skink Star Priest deals 2 damage to the Spiterider. The Warsong Ravenant deals 4 damage to Croak. The Slann deals no damage to the Spiterider. The Tree Lord deals 10 damage to Croak. Croak deals 1 damage to the Spiterider. The Tree Revenants deal 1 damage to the Bastiladon. Croak is slain. The Sylvaneth score 5 victory points. The battle tactic is Magical Mayhem. The Slann generates 2 extra command points. The Slann fails to activate Heroic Leadership. The Warsong Ravenant fails to activate Heroic Leadership. The Slann fails to cast Merciless Blizzard. The Slann casts Comet Skull, but it is unbound. Sylvaneth uses a Primal Dice. The Slann casts Arcane Bolt. The Slann casts Celestial Equilibrium. The Skink Star Priest fails to cast Cosmic Crush. The Seraphon activate Cleanse the Realms, dealing 3 damage to the Spiterider, 3 damage to the Warsong Ravenant, 2 damage to the Tree Lord, 5 damage to the Tree Revenants, 1 damage to the Ravenant Seekers, 1 damage to the Dryads, and 2 damage to the Lady of Vines. The Skink Star Priest activates Serpent Staff on the Bastiladon. The Realm Shape Engine activates and deals 2 damage to the Dryads and 2 damage to the Warsong Ravenant. The Slann activates Arcane Bolt and deals 1 damage to the Spiterider. The Skinks and the Bastiladon deal no damage to the Tree Revenants. The Bastiladon activates Roar on the Tree Lord. The Tree Lord activates Ground Shaker on the Saurus Warriors. The Bastiladon activates All-Out Attack. The Tree Revenants activate All-Out Defense using the Martial Memories ability. The Bastiladon finishes off the Tree Lord and deals 1 damage to the Tree Revenants. The Spiterider finish off the Skink Star Priest and the Slann. The Skinks deal 3 damage to the Tree Revenants. The Warsong Ravenant deals 2 damage to the Saurus Warriors. The Saurus Warriors finish off the Tree Revenants and deal no damage to the Warsong Ravenant. The Seraphon score 1 victory point. The battle tactic is overwhelming numbers. The Warsong Ravenant activates their finest hour. The Spiterider activate Rally, returning 1 model. The Battlereport deals no damage to the Warsong Ravenant. The Warsong Ravenant activates all out defense. The Saurus Warriors slay the Warsong Ravenant that activates Seed of Rebirth and returns to life with 3 wounds. The Warsong Ravenant deals no damage to the Saurus Warriors. The Battlereport deals 2 damage to the Warsong Ravenant. The Spiterider deals 7 damage to the Battlereport. Seraphon score 3 victory points. Hello again. So another aftermath of an epic battle report. This one very different from last week's battle report, where we saw a similar Seraphon list with the same player going against Sylvaneth and having a very uneven game, you might say, mostly because of the Sylvaneth player, which was me. This battle report is very different, and let's start with the matchup itself. Sylvaneth is a very, in my mind, a very unconventional army. So it has a lot of rules that are not very common or don't exist at all in other armies. The fact that you generate terrain via spells or via abilities is very interesting, very tactical in a way, because you really benefit from having terrain near your units, and it allows you to teleport it, so it increases your mobility, it increases your resilience, it increases the damage output of your units, and it allows you to, for example, strike in faith, which is an allegiance ability for Sylvaneth. And together with that, I am a huge fan of one of their, let's say, Season of War dash sub-allegiance, which is the Everdusk and the Winterleaf sub-allegiance. So the Everdusk Season of War basically allows you, for the cost of subtracting 3 inches from the range at which you can activate a lot of abilities near overgrown terrain or awakened wildwoods, it allows you to, on an unmodified hit roll of a 6 with a melee weapon, get 2 hits. Okay, it's simple. Everdusk is just, whenever you're near terrain, you get exploding 6s. But together with the Everdusk sub-allegiance, together with the Winterleaf sub-allegiance, you get no retreat within 3 inches of your units. So your opponent cannot retreat within 3 inches, but the special rule, the special bonus of tagging these two together is it also cannot remove models from within 3 inches of your units and set them up elsewhere during the battle. This was not on purpose, so I didn't tailor the list to go against Seraphon and stop them from teleporting or stop them from retreating. This has always been, and I'm not a huge Sylvaneth player. I've just started recently playing Sylvaneth, although I did see a lot of people play it. But in my mind, this is the most useful of sub-allegiances and Seasons of War combinations.
There are other that can be interesting if you have a certain type of army, but this one, I think it's multi-purpose. It's huge against certain factions, such as Nighthaunt, for example. You can, of course, if you have the initiative, you earn a double turn, or you get that long charge, you have the ability to stop someone on their tracks, and if you're smart enough, you can do it without taking damage back. And the no retreat, no teleport is just, I think it's very interesting, very strong, and it goes well with the rest of the army abilities. Now, that being said, Sylvaneth is not that conventional, but it does have some things that you can take with you that can allow you to play on the same level as other factions in certain types of builds. For example, the castle build. I think Sylvaneth has a large potential to do the castle build, especially when you take items and traits that allow you to ignore spells on a 4+, such as the one I picked, Radiant Spirit. I know that most people take the command trait where you choose a terrain piece and you can cast spells through it, like an Umbrella spell portal, so to speak, but I really think Radiant Spirit is amazing. This ability to ignore spells or endless spells wholly within 12 enemy ones is very good. And again, I didn't choose it because it was Seraphon. I chose it honestly. I chose it because I always choose this command trait to start the game not worrying about that alpha strike by Tzeentch, by Lumineth, or by Seraphon. The same way I use Null Myriad before it was kind of popular now, because it's so good to ignore one of the phases of your enemy turn. This is also a 50% chance of ignoring what he does, and he takes the risk and he spends those primal dice, etc. And on a 4+, it's like it never happened. So it's really, really good. I honestly would take this always in a competitive list. The other thing I chose was again, grand strategy is keeping my general, my Andorian Locus alive. And the Warsong Ravenant is perfect for that because it has a natural 4+ ward save. It has the Seed of Rebirth, so it can come back to life if it dies for some reason. And so he's very solid. It's a very solid hero. And I know that people don't usually take the Warsong Ravenant and the Lady of Vines in the same list, but they both provide bubbles of protection to your army. And the Lady of Vines has a second thing that I love, which is summoning. This army is not that big. It doesn't have that much resilience to it. So if you can summon 10 Dryads for just a 2+, it's amazing. It's tactically valuable, very valuable. Together with her spell that now is a little bit more... It's a little bit easier to cast, which is the ward save around her, 5+ ward save. These two bubbles ensure that you survive both the hero phase and the enemy shooting phase with some health. Now, this is not just because you can have these bubbles and what are you exactly protecting? I think that, and I built this list to do that, extreme mobility is important in Sylvaneth. So 3 units of 3 Ravenants, and finally a Tree Lord, and 2 big units of both Spiterider Lancers, 6 Spiterider Lancers, and 6 Ravenant Seekers. Why? Because it's a lot of wounds that come back, that revive, that heal, that have a rally on a 5+, that can heal all wounds when they kill a model, and they're very mobile and they're very resilient either inside or outside of these protective bubbles. So the army, together with the Spite Swarm Hive, is just built for extreme mobility and resilience. It looks fragile, but it's not necessarily the case. My opponent was again putting up a traditional Starborn list. He tweaked a little here and there from the last list. So he took out the Troglodyte and he got in a couple of units of Saurus Warriors. He also took out a unit of Skinks. And I think he took out an Endless Spell. But in essence, it's the same list. It's the same tactic, it's the same strategy, it's the same thing that demolished Lumineth last week. This matchup, I wasn't really sure what happened. So I have some protection against his stronger phase, but again, things might happen, and if the stars are aligned, and if I fail the 4+, and if I cannot unbind, not even 6 Spider Riders or 6 Ravenant Seekers or whatever will survive. Even the Warsong Ravenant will have trouble surviving. Now, first turn, I gave it away. Unlike the Lumineth game where I started the game and I was really trying for the Incarnate to go into the Seraphon army, here I wasn't in a hurry. So I learned, one of the lessons I learned last time, if I take a double turn, I want him to risk that teleport as much as he can. Bring him as forward as he can. So that if I get the turn, the first turn, I have to threaten him immediately. So this was the case. Basically, he started the game by casting some spells and launching Croak forward. Much like he did the last game in the second turn. But in this game he did it on the first turn. I was a bit surprised because I wasn't totally aware of how much he could bring into castle around Croak during his turn. But he left one of the units of Saurus Warriors outside of the battlefield. So when he moved forward, he actually summoned some Skinks. He cast some spells. I failed a lot of 4+s actually, but it didn't really matter because he was a little bit far away and he didn't do the type of damage he did last game. And also because he was hitting units that were pretty resilient. He got a wound here and a wound there, and he didn't get all the spells off. So I was, although I didn't roll that 4+ a lot, he didn't get many of the spells in, or it didn't do enough damage. But he did solidify around those two objectives, the two middle objectives. And he brought in the Saurus Warriors to cover one flank, and he got the Saurus Guard on the front to cover the front, and he got the other Saurus Guards on the other side to cover the back. And basically he castled up because he knew I had teleports, I had mobility, I had ways of getting to him, 6-inch pylons, etc. He did leave a couple of spaces here and there, which I was unsure if it was a bait or if it was an opportunity. It ended up being more of an opportunity than a trap. But this was his first turn. I actually chose his movement phase to disrupt, because this is a battle plan where you can disrupt one of the phases if you go second. And this helped me make him spend some of the command points in excess. So these command points were very important because in the first turn, he didn't really have that many command points to defend himself from the strike. And I went in with at least 3 units because I needed to ensure that even though one of them could eventually, and it was the last flank with the Ravenants, one of them could eventually strike and fade, because it was important for me not to stick around too much because of his spells, because he could have the turn and devastate a lot of units, even with the Cleanse the Realms rule. I did go in with 3 units to ensure that most of his army, at least a significant portion of it, would not be able to retreat, would not be able to teleport out of there. At the same time, I brought my castle on top of that. So I brought the 4+ ignore spells to close in on that, because he had advanced towards me and I advanced towards him. So although he has this bubble where he can launch a lot of spells, I had the bubble to protect my army, or at least most of my army that was in melee, from spells. And again, during my turn, I was unable to cast most of the spells. I think I only casted 1. And it's relatively frustrating because for each spell you try to cast, his Unbind gives him celestial points. So it's kind of like Tzeentch, where he's waiting for you to cast spells to earn summoning points. And here, it's just, if I cast spells and he unbinds them, or he dispels my endless spells, it's piling in on top of whatever he casted last turn. So I was actually struggling if I wanted to cast spells or not, which is kind of a tough mechanic to the game, because I really want to cast my spells. I want to be free of doing it. But if I cast them, I'm feeding my army, basically, my opponent's army, basically. So I brought the Warsworn Ravenant forward. I establish a bubble on top of his castle, basically, and hope for the best, really. So I did do some damage, and the most relevant damage I did during this incursion was killing the Astrolith Bear. It was a bit unlucky of him because he was passing on wounds to the Saurus card, but he missed some of them and he took a lot of damage, so he died. That alone, killing the Astrolith Bear, is extremely relevant because he loses the ward save, he loses a casting bonus, and he loses the ability to increase the range of spells by 6 inches. I also took down 1 unit of Saurus guards, so Croak and the Skink Priest were left with no bodyguards if I were to get the next turn. Together with the fact that I brought the Spiterider Lancers to cover a lot of his frontage, means whatever happens next turn, unless he kills those Spiterider Lancers, all of them, which are a lot of wounds, about 30 wounds, he's not getting out of there. He's not moving out of there. And he's not taking advantage of the Astrolith Bearer anymore. So that's very important, and establishing the bubble on top of it. In any case, the next play, which I did, was move back my Ravenant Seekers, so the Strike and Fade rule. I did do it wrong for a simple reason. I moved them in a way that part of that unit was in my territory. So again, new battle tactics. I was worried about breaking that castle. I wasn't worried about my battle tactic and ensuring, although it seemed obvious that I had more units outside of my territory than inside of my territory at a given time, the mechanic of bringing back 1 unit and getting out of there after it fought kind of messed things up in a way that I failed my battle tactic, which was an easy one, actually. So then what happened was I took some damage. I wasn't too worried about the damage I took, and roll off, I get the double turn this time. And this was extremely important. If I didn't have this, the game would probably be less obvious. It would be decided probably on the 4th or the 5th round only. Probably on the 5th round. Because he would have the opportunity to blast me with spells again, and I would fail some of the ignores and some of the unbinds, and he would probably earn a lot of celestial points for that. But I did earn the double turn. I did win the double turn, And he opted to disrupt my combat phase, because it was the thing that was making a difference at this time. And so finally I got to cast a very important spell, one that went through, and that was probably the most important one to go through, which was Aspect of the Everqueen. And the Lady of Vines came in and just bubbled up 12 inches around her near the Seraphon castle. This on top of the 4+ spell ignore, and on top of a double turn where most of his bodyguards were already spent and most of his screens were outside of where they could be influential, was very important. And he had 90% of his army near my unit, so he couldn't retreat, he couldn't teleport out of there anyway. So basically the bet was going all in, trying to kill the Slann, trying to kill either the Slann or Kroak was kind of the mission that turn. I think that my battle tactic was not very well chosen, because I had very little room to put any of my heroes in melee. Although the Warsong Ravenant flew, my battle lines were not that great, but I needed to charge something and stay with at least one of them at the end of the turn within 3 inches of an enemy unit. So I actually got a little bit lucky with the Warsong Ravenant, because I didn't have that much room, so we had to get an 8-inch charge. I did get an 8-inch charge after a reroll. The turn was basically a lot of fighting, the shooting phase either side was not that influential. The main phases in this game were the hero phase and the combat phase and the movement phase. And in the hero phase, the only really relevant thing I did was to get that 5+ ward save and get in melee as fast as I could. Get her near the front of my army and get into melee. So I went in again with the Ravenant Seekers. I pushed again after they have destroyed 10 Saurus Guards in the previous turn. This time they went in to fight the Slann, fight the Skink Priest, and fight a couple of more Saurus Guards that had survived. The outcome of that was relatively good, although the main thing that happened was on the other side of the battle, which was both the Tree Lord and the Warsong Ravenant brought down Kroak. And this was very important, because Kroak is 4 spells, is a lot of bonuses to cast, a lot of bonuses to unbind and to dispel, and he's basically a threat. At any given time, he can cast 4 times the same spell, affect essentially 12 units, and you can repeat the units that you affect if he gets all those 4 spells in. So this was very important. I didn't get to kill the Skink Priest. He got lucky and he got 1 wound left, but I did kill a lot of things that turn that made it much harder for my opponent that couldn't retreat and couldn't teleport out of there to recover from that. Although we did play his turn, in his turn, the magic phase was, without the Astrolith, without Kroak, much worse and much more manageable by my army that had a 5+ war bubble and a 4+ ignore spells bubble right next to him. The fact that he got units tied into strong anvils like the Tree Lord that made him unable to threaten my backline or to teleport or to go after objectives was very relevant. And although he fought back, he brought 10 Saurus warriors from the other edge of the board into this fight, and he even managed to threaten the Warsong Ravenant a little bit. The Slann fell, the Skink Priest fell during that turn, and there was nothing he could do about it because he couldn't move, he couldn't get out of there. So he got a lot of damage into them. and he was unable to get through that. We did play. He did earn the double turn also. He did win it from the third to the fourth round to the third round, but it was just basically him trying to kill the Warsong Ravenant, which was my grand strategy was to keep him alive. He got a little bit Chuck Norris, so he didn't die. He was kind of lucky on melee ward saves, but he was kind of unlucky with shooting and with spells at a given point. But he did survive, and after he survived, my opponent just gave up because I had all of the units in my army intact. I had a superiority in the hero phase and in the combat phase and in the movement phase, and I was basically just destroying the rest of his army while he didn't have any ability to bring it back. He did use Cleanse the Realms, and that was probably what caused the most damage because my bubble was on top of him. So any ability that says, "Oh, you're near me," so everybody gets d6 mortal wounds, would likely have an effect. So it did have an effect, but I don't recall losing any unit at all. I recall losing at the end 1 unit of 3 Ravens. So even though some spikes in dice happened, even though it was a double turn on the at the right time, even though I got that specific spell off at the right time, I think that my strategy this time against his castle was much more effective than last game. Even though all of those things happened during the last game that coincided and made it very uneven, I'm pretty sure that this time part of the strategy that he had in mind didn't work and got him in a position of risk that he eventually couldn't hold on to, especially because of the specific allegiance abilities of Sylvaneth. Like, you don't retreat, you don't teleport out of there. So, last thoughts. I do think that Sylvaneth are able to deal with this type of lists, Starborn and Seraphon. I'm not sure if this was evident for all Sylvaneth players or in general for other people who play Sylvaneth. Most people say that OBR and Khorne are stronger because they have anti-magic immunity and they earn things, in the case of Khorne, from ignoring spells. But I do think this bubble, together with the resilience, the natural resilience of having a lot of wounds in your main hammers, is very good against this specific build, this specific Seraphon build. This is not to say that you cannot lose against Seraphon. You can for sure lose because that 4-up is no insurance at all. But most of the things in your army are well equipped for you to just risk them at the right time and not risk it all needlessly. So you can strike and fade, you can teleport, you can protect them from line of sight with the woods, and it's basically a less unbalanced game in my mind. At least I'm not sure if this was just from the game itself. I get this feeling that Sylvaneth has the tools, if it's well played and if you are not unlucky, it has the tools to deal with this Starborn build. Another last thought. So I do think that units of 6 Spiterider Lancers or Ravenant Seekers are good for resilience, are good for the battle regiment actually, without having to turn them into battle line units or anything like that. But it's large footprints, positioning has to be very well trained. I wasn't trained at all in this, so I kind of had to struggle to find a room for them to hit all of them, even without the coherency rules, the ancient coherency rules. But Again, splitting a unit of Ravenant Seekers into 2 units of 3 would make more sense to recover more models wholly within 12 with their rules for recovering on a 2+ models at the end of the movement phase. That's one of the thoughts. The second thought is, I do love the fact that I brought the Lady of Vines right next to the Warsong Ravenant. I am pretty sure that it has its disadvantages, so if you lose one of them, you only have one hero, and heroes are very important for a lot of things. But I think the summoning is very good. The Lady of Vines summoning is very good. And the Warstrong Ravenant is very good for this specific grand strategy. And in this edition, he's very good because he has a good board save, and he has 2 spells and 2 unbinds with +1 to cast and unbind any spell. So he's basically a very good Antorian Locus, and is well worth it. The Tree Lord is useful for certain situations where you don't want your enemy to pile in and you don't want him to retreat either. So if you tag him at the end of the unit, he is probably highly inefficient because he cannot move out of there and he cannot pile in if you hit him first, or if you stomp him to get the always strikes last. And again, terrain is huge at Sylvaneth. You have to choose well your terrain. I didn't choose that well because I only chose one of the terrains at the left was open and not subject to interference by the enemy. But I did think of that when I positioned terrain. I was a defender when I positioned terrain, and you should also. Any Sylvaneth good player will do that. One last thought. I'll be probably off for a couple of weeks because I'm on holidays, but we'll come back with more battle reports very soon. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you keep liking the videos and commenting the videos. Some of you say, why don't you explode? Why don't you grow? Your channel is great. Well, yeah, I guess YouTube algorithms feed off likes and comments and views, so it's up to you. It's not up to me. I just do this for fun, okay? So thank you, and we'll see each other very soon. Happy holidays for those of you who are going on holidays. For the other ones, keep checking out Age of Sigmar content. Thank you.